on the line right now is our good friend Bret Baier from the Fox News Channel. Bret, how are you?
Hey, good morning, guys.
You know, I remember the days over at Fox News. You go in there for that special report planning meeting every morning. It's a big round table, and all the staff goes in there, and they decide what's going to be on the show that night and what stories they are going to pursue. I would imagine that these days, when you go into that meeting, Bret, it's an embarrassment of riches. You've got so much stuff to choose from.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we'd really like to take over Shepard Smith's hour.
But I think Shep would have something to say about that, yeah.
I don't think it would go over too well. Yes, you're exactly right, Brian. I mean, that's the biggest challenge, is to try to fit it all into 1 hour with commercials. The other night, thanks to the president speaking during our hour, we dropped some commercials and moved the panel up front, and we're doing all kinds of things to try to make it all fit in there. But you're right. I mean, there's so much stuff to cover, and I've said it before, but I mean, it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Well, what is the story that you see as the one that has the most impact, potentially could be the most interesting as it goes forward?
I mean, there's two answers to that question. One is the IRS scandal has the most personal, for people who follow it, it's easy to get. Across the board, both sides of the aisle can appreciate the fear of a government targeting people based on ideology. And, you know, when you hear the details of it, you know, both sides, lawmakers say it was egregious. And I think that has the most potential to be detrimental, especially if it goes beyond the IRS. And I think these hearings will be really something to watch. The fact that the president said he learned about it from the press was a little interesting, in that the White House counsel knew weeks ago, and the White House communications director, Dan Pfeiffer, said yesterday on CNN that they knew, that the White House counsel knew weeks ago, but they didn't tell the president, and he learned from the press, he said, on Friday. So that whole scenario is just doesn't. Well, it just doesn't.
Well, we had Lanny Davis on about 2 hours ago, and he said if that's the case, then this White House counsel needs to find another job.
Yeah, and I think Jack Quinn, who used to be White House counsel for Bill Clinton, said that would be pretty unique too. The other one I think that has the most staying power, because there's so many things there that we still really don't know, is Benghazi, and I think that, you know, all this focus on the talking points and the back and forth, and by the way, I think reporters who look at that and say that there's nothing to those emails, I'm not sure what they're looking at, because I can point to a number of things said at the podium that are directly contradicted in the black and white on those pages. But
I agree.
Despite the talking points, I mean, you still have the question of the stand-down order. Who tells the military don't send anybody in? Why aren't there military assets available within 8 hours on 9/11 when we've had warnings and intelligence chatter? These are questions that weren't answered in the ARB. How much did they go out of their way to get over the fact that state was warned numerous times by CIA about the security situation, and yet it was unanswered? I don't know. I think that has a lot more staying power than for the long term, but IRS is probably the biggest shiny item right now.
Well, I think you're right, and I also think because as you said, the American people, they get the IRS, and they already seem like an intrusive and a real problem that people are suspicious of, and then you add this to it where they're acting in a partisan way, and then as these things go, as these stories go, Bret, there's always, you know, every day there seems to be a new revelation, and late yesterday we got the revelation that the woman who was in charge of the division that handled this nonprofit screening for the IRS, she's now in charge of implementing the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. Will there be wide-ranging implications based on that?
Yes, of course, and I think that is another offshoot of the IRS story. I mean, you know, not only that fact that she's now overseeing implementation, but the fact that the IRS is such a crucial part of Obamacare, and there will be an effort by Republicans to undercut the IRS funding, I think, and that directly affects Obamacare. And, you know, for all of these symbolic repeal votes in the House, if you start taking money away from IRS in an environment where people are anti-IRS, you suddenly put a dagger in the heart of the ability of the health care law to work.
And as
One more thing about the IRS thing. the guy who they make this big deal of saying they fired or forced resignation, he's going to leave in a few days anyway. He was set to, Stephen Miller was set to leave his post in early June and leave the IRS entirely within 2 months.
Yeah.
So the big, East Room thing, we're taking action, I don't know.
Action signifying not much.
Yeah. I mean, a few days.
The other thing that's breaking this morning, and the Washington Examiner's reporting it this morning, is that this woman who both, scrutinized the Tea Party, was in charge of the unit that scrutinized Tea Parties, and is now in charge of Obamacare. She got like $100,000 in bonuses over the course of her career. And there's a little note in the Washington Examiner story. It says, by the way, these bonuses have to be approved by the president.
Yeah.
So there you go. You haven't talked about the AP story. Now, my feeling is that a lot of people look at the AP story, the Justice Department, seizing the phone records of AP reporters. They look at it and go, yeah, reporters. I don't like reporters anyway, so I don't care. But this is a really sort of significant story.
It is. I guess just by the breadth and scope of the net that they threw, and we don't know all the details. We do know that it deals with national security, and basically that there was this story about this mole inside Al Qaeda. I think that's where the genesis of the major concern is about. But the fact that you had phone lines and logs from 100 plus reporters, that's a pretty big operation. The other thing is that the Attorney General told the NPR the other day that he doesn't remember how many of these investigations he's approved.
Yeah. He
turned a few down, but he doesn't remember how many he's approved. Now, that suggests that there are, let's say, more than a handful. So, you have a situation where the administration is sending a signal to whistleblowers and possible sources that, hey, we're watching.
Yeah, and journalists in this town live and die on their sources. I think that's why you're seeing such a reaction from a press who, up until lately, has really ignored this stuff.
And by the way, the Attorney General doesn't remember when he recused himself, and he didn't write it down.
Brett, I'm thinking you're going to have just as much fun tonight as we had all morning today.
It's been something.
It's an embarrassment of riches.
Also, congratulations on that really great Kermit Gosnell special you did last Friday.
Oh, thank you. It actually reruns. We've redone it with obviously all the developments. Plus, there's another case, another abortion doctor out in Texas that they're starting to draw up charges on, and so we get into that at the end. But we've redone the hour, and it runs again tonight at 9 and on Sunday at 9.
Oh, that's great. We'll look for that. Thanks, Bret Baier. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Bye, Brett.